Welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time visiting. My name's Tina Hurley. I'm the founder and executive director of Less Leg, More Heart, a charity that helps amputees in a variety of ways. For more information about the organization, ways to help, volunteer, or just get involved in general, be part of our army, you can head to www.lesslegmoreheart.com. This platform is a beautiful place where we share stories of inspiration, we educate about topics relevant to really everybody, and those are things that not necessarily have to do with supplies and goods that are vetted, but also services and knowledge bombs that you can use to make yourself better, to improve your quality of life, and ultimately to reduce suffering and to spread hope sooner than others usually would have found it. So in keeping with that theme, today's guest is incredible. We're very lucky to have her. Today we're talking to April Adams. She's an Orpheus Trainer and Coach.
Yep.
I believe that's the title. She is an incredible resource of emotional healing. She's done a lot of work in that field during her life. She's actually a best-selling author of multiple books. I mean, the knowledge base that she has is extensive. I would encourage you, please, to look into information related to April and the incredible work that she's doing. But I want to talk about that. Today's topic is going to be about finding emotional relief. And in the ways that April practices, there's a variety of tools that can be used to not just deal with the things that you've automatically been sort of, I should say, gifted through the hardships of your life or the traumas that you've experienced, but there's ways to actually change the narrative and change the responses. And this was a really hopeful concept that I recently found out in finding April as a resource, and I really wanted to share it with you all. So without further ado, April, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me.
Oh, it's my honor. I don't want to talk more about what you do because I'm certainly just blundering and not able to do it justice. But could you explain sort of your background, maybe the why you sort of got to this place and what it is that you're doing?
Sure, absolutely. We all have our own issues and what drives us to do the work on ourselves. And I had been working on the same issue on myself over and over and over again and trying everything that I could. I went for traditional talk therapy. I read all kinds of self-help books. I was doing mindfulness and meditation and like all of these different processes. And I was still only finding either temporary relief or it would take something down a little bit, but not completely. And I was like, how do we actually get rid of the issue? Instead of just peeling away the layers of an onion, how many layers can there be? That's how you start to feel when you're doing a ton of work on yourself. So I want to be able to just excavate the entire thing. And finally, I came across these tools that I work with now, and I found I was able to get really fast relief, but it lasted too. So I was literally able to excavate the things that I thought I was going to be dealing with forever. So
it's wild, and I know the more that we sort of take the veil off, these things that people are going to feel the same kind of relief and hope, because I know personally going through a lot of traumas in growing up, and then the obvious limb loss and secondary effects of that, again, loss and trauma and triggers and anxieties and fears, and then you start to develop and cultivate this mindset that becomes a barrier to your true appreciation and experience of the joy that you could experience every day without those tainted sort of shades on. And a lot of folks just don't feel like they have time to go see a therapist, or time to, or the will to, or the knowledge to work on something themselves. Where would they start? How do they pay for it? All of these questions that are barriers.
Right.
How do you speak to that? When you talk about finding these tools and being able to excavate, is it a massive commitment up front for people, or can they start with like small chunks and palatable pieces, or even self-navigated journeys?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these tools are available for self-help use. at this time. So you can just go to the Orpheus website. These tools are through Orpheus. OrpheusMindTechnologies.com is the website. And the tools are available to use for anybody, and you can just use it on day-to-day annoyances. And honestly, your first round or two, I probably would recommend starting with something a little bit lighter, something that's bothering you this week or whatever, just to be able to see the shift that you're capable of around something that has been really pushing your buttons, but maybe isn't your biggest trauma of your life. And then it's perfectly fine to go ahead and start working through any major traumatic experiences you've had, any phobias that you have, and acknowledging what you've been through and the kinds of thoughts and feelings you have around that issue, or what you're afraid of and the thoughts and feelings you have around that. While you're using, these are audio tracks that you play that essentially are convincing your subconscious mind that you're safe. So you can get relief from these negative emotional loops and reactivity that we tend to helplessly have. Like, we can do a ton of work on ourselves consciously, going to therapy, being mindful, being able to talk ourselves down when we're being triggered, after we've been triggered. But this is about preventing future triggerings. So being able to actually remove the fight or flight response from that particular trigger or trauma. At the very least, dial it down to where you're far more comfortable and able to handle it. And the more of this work you do, the smaller the reaction becomes. And some people get relief in the first 12 minutes of doing this work. Some people need multiple rounds to get relief. But across the board, the vast majority of people get full-on relief by using these tools. It's miraculous, excuse me. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, you know, it's from the medical side of things, I have so many thoughts about this. We tell folks in Western medicine that they need to mitigate the risk factors for the outcomes and the comorbidities medically that are occurring as a result of stress.
Right.
Chronic fight or flight, which essentially disrupts hormonal balances and takes a toll on people physically.
Yeah.
I mean, really erodes your emotional and physical well-being.
Right.
But I've heard tips like, take a walk and try yoga and meditation, and without necessarily the system for, or the tools or resources for how to follow that through. So you could say, Tina, you need to go to the Mars. Mars is going to fix your problem. There's no gravity there. Your leg's not going to get an issue. Your calf muscle's not going to engage. Your pathology's not going to, you got to go to Mars. Or I'm sorry, the moon. Okay. But I have no rocket. I don't have fuel. I don't know any astronauts. I don't have any of those MREs, and I really need to eat when I get there.
Right.
So finding those pieces to get you to that outcome is important, but we're not a system yet, at least
Right.
Western side, that has the time reimbursement. I mean, it's a systems issue. So knowing resources like this that people can be directed to in that stress relief field is important, because people don't get directed, but they also don't recognize, I think, and I'm speaking me. This was me.
Yeah.
Before my increasing knowledge. The more you learn you don't know, right? And before that, I was too busy to meditate. And if I ever tried, which I did a few times because people said it was good for my stress levels, I would sit down, and then everything in the world that I had been running from emotionally would catch me like a huge tsunami. And it was so uncomfortable that I would then not complete the meditation. And then so you just keep running.
Right.
And you keep avoiding.
Trauma, if you've had massive trauma, meditation shouldn't be the first go-to. Because typically that's exactly what your brain is going to do, is go looking for what problems do we need to solve? What do we need to dive into and examine? So as soon as you go quiet, your brain's going to start going on the hamster wheel, trying to figure out, how do we solve this? How do we fix this? So actually dealing with the issue at its root on the subconscious level, which is the part of the brain that is fixating and constantly watching for what can get us, what looks similar to something bad we've experienced in the past. And everything that we're taught mainstream is a way to cope. with our emotions. So they're typically not something that fixes the emotions, that take it away, that remove that fight or flight response. They just help you to distract from it or be able to take it down a little bit, but not to be able to take care of that issue and have long-term relief from that issue. That's the huge difference, and why I've become obsessed with doing this work and thrown my entire life into this work, is because it's completely different from anything else. The closest thing to it is EMDR, which is a wonderful treatment that you can get in therapy, that over time, if you go to a therapist and you do the process of EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, over time, most people get relief from their fight or flight response to whatever it is that they work on. And so I'm happy that that has existed for such a long time, and that, you know, there's finally something that's not just a way to cope with emotions, but actually a solution. However, it often takes an entire session, many times, to take care of one issue, one trauma. And there isn't any kind of suggestion to your brain as to what to do with that memory after the fact. It's something you have to pay for, you have to go back to over and over again. It's a long time of focusing on something negative. And what these tools do with Orpheus is it shrinks that time down. And first of all, you can do it in the privacy of your own home. You don't have to talk to anybody else in order to do this. Some people like to have guidance of a coach or a therapist, and that's what the Orpheus therapists are there for. But you literally can just do this in the privacy of your own home without having to tell somebody else your entire story and unload all of that. It's cost effective. It doesn't cost what therapy costs. And you're just able to feel your feelings about the thing that you need to release, and the audio track is convincing your subconscious to let go of that particular thing, to be able to relax and feel safe in the face of something that your subconscious used to perceive as a threat.
It's just incredible. It almost sounds like too simple to be as good as what you say. And in my mind as a clinician too, I just go, why aren't we spreading this information?
Yes.
Why isn't this on pamphlets in every medical office and mental health facility?
We're working on it.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's sad to me that such just an incredible technology platform and healing opportunity exists and isn't mainstream yet because of the nooks and crannies. People, we're not finding it or coming across it. So I'm really excited for people to look into it. You talked about feeling your feelings. And I just want to touch on that because I run this nonprofit, and I would say the large majority of the folks that I see, which is representative of most special populations with and without physical disability, it's special populations that have particular triggers, particular stereotypes or stigmas or, you know, similar universal concerns, regardless of why. And they're all, the majority of all of them are not comfortable feeling. They're not comfortable with sitting with themselves. And how do you start to encourage just that first step? So someone could be all about the Orpheus tools, and somebody could be really in that heavy pre-contemplation, just flicking back and forth before the action piece of the readiness. And but they're too concerned about what it looks like to just be alone and sit with themselves. How would you approach that person?
Yeah.
Aside from just do it, which I would say,
just get to it.
That's not going to help.
Right. If only we could just get people to do what, you know, what we believe is right. Well, let's look at a little bit why people are so uncomfortable with their feelings. Like, as children, we're punished immediately. Like, we're shut down, we're shamed, we're turned away for having strong emotions. The first thing we say to a crying baby, shh, don't cry. First thing we say to a toddler, settle down, be quiet, use your inside voice. Like, it's just constant. Your emotions are not acceptable here. So we learn to shut it down.
Wow.
And then when we're faced with something uncomfortable, we don't know how to handle it. Nobody taught us how to cope with our feelings in a healthy way. So I'm glad that there are therapies and mindfulness and things like that to at least teach us how to healthily cope with and feel our feelings. But it's easier said than done, and it's not the norm. And most people escape into something to avoid their feelings, whether it's addiction or getting on social media or shopping, whatever you do to avoid your feelings. And everybody has something that they do that for. So the thing that I recommend, first and foremost, you can actually use the audio track to freak out about your strong feelings, to work on your discomfort with having feelings in the first place. And it takes away your discomfort.
If the camera's not looking at me because they're seeing you laugh, I'm sitting here just going like this. Because it just sounds so simple, April.
I know.
So let's talk real quick about that. So it's an audio track, and as someone that's analytical, I had been really interested in the portion of your presentation that talked about the different types of science-based pieces, or the pieces that are used, NLP,
Yes.
and could you maybe just speak to that piece for the folks that may be inclined to want to know a little bit about how a simple audio track may be able to help them?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, so basically what this track does is it combines all of these methods and modalities that have been proven effective on their own into one method, plus a few other innovations that nobody else has thought of. So it includes elements of neurolinguistic programming, like speaking the subconscious mind's language. So, even when you're not like in a hypnotic state or something, there are certain ways you can speak to a person that gets the subconscious mind to sit up and pay attention and go, oh, what's this person talking about? What's that? Advertising uses it all the time. Tony Robbins uses it all the time. So it's part of kind of getting us to buy into something, but it's also a method or modality that a psychologist might use to reprogram your brain. And there's also suggestion to your brain to give you clear instruction on how to move on from something, how to perceive that issue from here on out, where you're going to store it, what you're going to do with it. And the guy who created this program used to be a computer programmer, and he's also always been enamored with the subconscious mind. So he recognized that there were similarities between how the human brain processes language patterns and information to how a computer processes those things. And it's like he's figured out how to reprogram the human computer. So it's taking all of the aspects of all of the things. There's even elements of EMDR in this, because with EMDR, when you're moving your eyes or you're doing stimulation of both sides of your body, you're activating both sides of your brain so that you're in a whole brain state to reprocess that negative thing that you've been through. And so there is some tapping. It's not like EFT tapping that people hear about. It's completely different. And what you do, you hear these different sounds throughout the track, and you have to tap the correct hand to the correct sound, and that's creating the stimulation of both sides of your brain, and also kind of getting your conscious mind out of the way by keeping it so busy with the tapping exercise that the words on the track are able to get into the subconscious mind and create change and convince it of its safety so that you can let go and move on from the issue.
Incredible. What are the lengths of the track? So someone goes, okay, I'm ready to jump into action. April is convincing me. It seems like she's so happy. Tina's over there wiggling. Seems like I need some of this secret sauce. So they check out more information on your website, and they sign up for the Orpheus tools, and then they have to, I shouldn't say they have to, I hate those words. They get to do the tracks. Yes, and they get to do the tracks. And so what kind of time domain are they looking at? Like, not in just maybe minutes or however long, but frequency. Is it more is better? Is it a dose response? What is that sort of formula?
So the actual tracks themselves are 12 minutes long. There's also some instructional tracks and things like that. And also I'll share, there's a link for my website and my tutorial on how to use these tools and get the best results with it. But just going to their site, they do have tutorials and some brief instructions on how to use the tracks as well, which you may want to brush up on before you jump in and start automatically doing the tracks. But the tracks themselves are 12 minutes long, and most people find at least a 50% reduction of their reactivity to that issue in first round.
It's incredible.
So, you know, not everybody has that immediate of that big of a response, but the majority of people do see it that quickly. And so what I often recommend is to do 1 to 3 rounds a day to kind of chip away at things. And if for whatever reason your emotions become heightened while you're doing it, do another round immediately. And often, even if you're getting heightened in that first round, the second round will take it down considerably. So, you know, some people, especially if they have panic or, you know, strong anxiety, there's a tendency to go, oh, it's making it worse, I need to stop. Where actually the more worked up you get while you're doing this process, the easier it is for it to decouple the emotion from the trigger.
Wow.
So let me back up to the science here. There are these synapses in our brain that connect a trigger to a specific emotional response. And what this track is doing is disconnecting those synapses so that when you have a trigger arise or something that reminds you of a past trigger, you have a neutral emotional response to it instead of your typical like auto response. So it's pretty incredible.
Because how many times have any of us done something? You're in a conversation or someone, I don't know, cut you off or something that all of a sudden disproportionately affects you, where you then respond in either a violent outburst or a huge sigh, and then you start to carry the weight of the frustration of whatever it is with you because of nothing other than, if you were to look at it objectively, a tiny, if anything, inconvenience, but it feels magnified because of these ties, I think, that you're talking about, where it's rooted in something. How maybe something like that happened to us before, and it makes us feel not heard or not valued, or these kinds of threats don't necessarily have to be physical. It's your worth. It's attacking the fiber of your validity. And I thought that was a really important thing that you had mentioned too. These ties are not just
speaking my language.
Well, I mean, I may have watched quite a bit of your content in my own personal improvement efforts, which are still ongoing.
Well, that's the big part of what I find brings the best, most lasting results is if you can look at whatever, if you're working on something current that's bothering you or triggering you in the moment, even if it seems small but you're reacting largely, it is because it's reminding your subconscious of something you've been through before. So you have to ask yourself, okay, what's really bothering me about this thing? And when have I experienced something like that in the past? And acknowledging not only the current trigger, but the times in the past where you've had a similar experience. So if you're mad because someone's dismissing your feelings, then you want to look at, okay, when else have people dismissed my feelings? And for most of us, it's been since we were toddlers at least. So being able to just acknowledge the times that stand out to us of being dismissed and how tired we are of having our feelings dismissed, that can bring much better relief than just working on an isolated event or situation.
It's almost, these sayings that we hear every day are so cliche until it actually is relevant to something in your life. But I remember years and years ago, someone had said, you got to feel it to heal it. And I remember them, like, it's sort of like embrace the suck, or we're going to walk through the fire, or whatever these sort of similar statements are. And it's such a tone, I think, of the things that you're saying is just almost getting your fingers on your own pulse and allowing yourself to sit in the sort of discomfort, but with a tour guide kind of, right? Like through these tools, you're not alone with it, but you're not.
Yeah, and I think part of the issue too for most people with the idea of having to sit there in their emotions and feel their feelings is that in the past, when they've tried to sit with something or when they've let themselves just lament and really get into having a pity party for themselves about something, that it has taken days to move past the emotional hangover that can come from that. And that's exactly what these tools are meant to help you circumvent, so that you don't have to struggle for hours and days and weeks after you have really swum around in your feelings about something. You're able to just move on from it instead of it hanging on you.
You're literally gaining not just quality of life, but regulatory control and governance of your own brain and emotionality. And you're gaining time, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's so incredible to me, and I'm so excited to personally explore it more. I feel like everybody that waits in a long line should have, like, every DMV in the country should have earphones hooked up to Orpheus, or any long Dunkin' Donuts line right now, or Starbucks, or any coffee shop. I don't want to, like, discriminate here,
All the
but
grocery stores, everywhere.
everywhere
Yeah.
should have just
Traffic.
earphones. Like at game places where you can walk through and try all things out.
Yeah.
I mean, just information
Yes.
for marketing, I
Yes.
guess. I'm here all day. So if you guys are interested in more information, like I certainly am, visit apriladams.com.
.org.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yes.
apriladams.org. And thank you so much for being here and sharing
Thank
your
you.
knowledge. It's just really exciting for the community to have this information and to at least have a resource to turn to. And even just, I mean, your social media is amazing. If you guys are on Instagram or Facebook and you want to start dabbling and learning and seeing the way April speaks to these certain topics in a relevant way, please check out her social media. What is your Instagram handle?
April Adams Emotion Coach.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, check it out. I love it. But thank you again for being here.
Thank you.
And just to remind everybody, Less Leg, More Heart is having our cornhole tournament and sort of concert summer celebration for our charity as a fundraising effort. It's June 5th, Sunday, coming up in less than 2 weeks at Bonfire Country Bar and Grill in Manchester from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Please come out and join us in the fun. This is Tina with Less Leg, and as always, put your best foot forward.